And boom, according to that, we are live. My name is Hiko Simon. Hopefully you can hear me. Everything is sounding okay and working. Welcome. This is Tokyo Tonight. It's 10:30 p.m. Japan Standard Time. Great to see we've got tons of people already in the comments. An interesting week of news with the new government and all that sort of stuff, if you're into that sort of thing. Of course, also happy to chase squirrels and do whatever. Tonight, I will be doing the after party as well as the show, but I also have to get to sleep and wake up at 5 a.m. to get on a plane for a flight. I'll be spending the week in Fukuoka. I don't know how busy I'm going to be when I'm down there, but if you're around and you want to meet up and say hello, hit me up. Best way to get me probably is a direct message on Twitter. But I'm on all the socials. I think it's all linked below. So I'm looking forward to that, getting down there. But so all on. But that said, right now I am here. We are live. Great to see we've already got DJ Sunnyside Up was in here first, claiming first. Shubis must have had an early coffee there in Panama because you made it there in second. Kerberos Tenshi jumped in with third. Dan H waving. We've got our moderator, Aaron. Great to see you. Black Tingu in from Athens. Great to see. Wow, we've got everybody rocking. We've got Lara in. Great to see you're there. So, yeah, great to see everybody. And, in terms of what's been going on with Miz, but the main thing is this week, it's actually, if you follow my Instagram, you might have seen I suddenly started running like 30 seconds every kilometer faster for every kilometer. The temperatures have now gone down to like the mid-20s. It still goes up sort of. We had one day that was like 30 this week, but it's pretty much getting down into what I wish, basically to what summer is like in New Zealand, which is survivable, which Tokyo is not. You can actually go outside during the day for the first time in nearly 4 months. So it is nice. However, it is always the deal with Japan that this time of year temperatures do drop quickly. However, this is the best time of year. And we are now in the zone that I recommend if you're ever planning a trip to Japan. There's kind of a narrow window, although we had a fantastic spring this year, actually. So maybe that will continue. But you've got March, April for spring, but definitely between now and even up to early December, the weather is generally really, really good. So highly recommend if you still want to take advantage of the cheap yen and get to Japan, now is the time to do it. As much as strongly as I've been telling you, do not come for the last wee while. It's really, really good right now. So, looking forward to taking a break. I'm actually really looking forward to doing some runs in Kyushu. I'll see if I can make the time, but I've already scoped out a couple of things I want to do. So, very much looking forward to that. Already got a comment here from Dan H. Charlie Browns feels like he wants to speed run being Prime Minister. Yeah, it looks like he's, in fact, Uno... What's the first name of Uno? I can't read the first name of Uno. I don't know. But was he the record for shortest? I don't know. That was a bit before my time. But it indeed looks like Ishiba's aiming for a record of getting kicked out. In fact, I saw a news story just today of Taro Aso kind of delivering a message to Takaichi, who came second, to get ready, either for a coup or for taking over. So we've got all of that. Dan H, bit of both. Going to catch up. Hopefully going to see my old host family, but have some work I've got to take with me as well. So I've extended so I can get some time on the weekend, so it should be fun. But yeah, Seb's still at work. Sorry to hear that. Well, I'm glad that you could make it anyway, even if you're just listening in. But and I appreciate you dropping the comment in here. The lovely Fukuoka indeed, says Black Tengu. And it is. Fukuoka is technically like my Japanese hometown. My home city, to the extent I have a home city outside of Japan, it's Auckland. I was actually born in South Auckland in a town called Papakura. But I went to high school and university in Auckland, and Auckland has a sister city relationship with Fukuoka. So nearly all the high schools in Auckland, when I was in high school, every high school in New Zealand taught Japanese, and all the high schools in Auckland have exchanges with sister schools in Fukuoka. So I went to Taisei Gakuen in Fukuoka for a couple of weeks, and we had a homestay person come back and stay with us. I've got my host family and everything down there. So that was my entry point into Japan. I hardly ever go down there, but it really is one of the nicest cities in Japan. So looking forward to that. Actually, that's right. Working on the weekend. Sorry to hear that, but yeah, that must be working on the weekend. Kerberos Tenshi, I didn't miss anything. We're just saying hellos. But that said, because I do want to be on time and I do need to get to sleep so I don't miss anything, so I don't miss my plane, which involves waking up at 5 o'clock in the morning, which I'm not very well prepared for lately. I've enjoyed a couple of sleep-ins on the weekend. So all of that taken into account, we have my Twitter bookmarks. I've actually widened this menu to include the side because sometimes I zoom in on graphics and it cuts off the side of graphics when I go to show them in the side window, and you can't see parts of them. So I'm going to widen it a little bit, which makes the text a little bit smaller, but hopefully you can keep up. So yeah, let's jump into it. So the start of the week, already, in fact, this was the start where basically Ishiba, I mean, it's an internal party election. He wasn't running for, it wasn't a national manifesto, but to the extent that they had, platforms and policies which they were publicly promoting as this is what, I'm going to lead the LDP to be. And some people, not to name names, but Jake Adelstein specifically comparing Ishiba to Bernie Sanders. I'm like, holy hell. I mean, comparing Ishiba to Bernie Sanders, saying that he's the Bernie Sanders of the LDP is like, saying, God, no, I'm forgetting names of Republicans, but it's like saying that a member of the Republican Party is like the AOC of the Republican Party. He still is old-fashioned LDP and has been the whole time, and he's not going to be that different, so you can't get hopes up. But he did outline a few ideas which were sort of, which got him some popular support, like, for example, supporting same-sex marriage, separate surnames for people who are married if they want them. So a few socially liberal sort of ideas, as well as sort of big vision ideas, like asserting that he wants to create an Asian version of NATO. He's definitely like a military nerd. So yeah, I guess he wants to have more models of toy models to play with or something. But he came in and pretty much straight away started backing off. In fact, instantly the new defense minister said, he wasn't serious about the NATO thing because America expressed displeasure at it. He was like, it's more just a vision that a long term. It's literally moving further away from it than saying it's a concept of a plan. It's a vision of a future concept of a plan to have an Asian NATO. And honestly, I don't really know how to him, it's a very simple idea of just having everybody have a mutual security deal where, everyone will collectively rush to the defense of any country that's attacked basically by China. It's basically everybody agreeing that, we're all going to be super friends. We're all going to have big military parties where we wear our different uniforms and show our different equipment. And if China, attacks any one of us, we'll get into trouble. However, China within ASEAN, for example, already they kind of own politically Cambodia and Laos, and they always have anytime ASEAN wants to agree anything that's unfavorable towards China, including simple things as saying let's all just agree within ASEAN that we all agree that all the territories that we claim are our territories, like in the South China Sea. Cambodia and Laos veto it. They're always like they basically are there to kind of run as interference for China in the region and prevent everything coming together against them. And already Southeast Asia was sort of saying, yeah, we don't want that, which when you think about what China's been doing to the Philippines lately and stuff like that, you could argue it makes sense, but it's not going to come together quite like that. It is hard to see. Even cooperation within ASEAN is hard when you think of the history of Malaysia and Indonesia and Singapore and, the sort of low-level wars that they had with each other for a long time after independence. But there again, it's one of these things. What would make more sense than an Asian NATO? How can you have an Asian NATO when you can't even get Korea and Japan to cooperate militarily? And you think about, how close Korea and Japan are in terms of their alliance with America, in terms of their, sort of post-war trajectory and everything. In terms of their proximity, in terms of the number of Koreans that live in Japan and the close ties and everything else. There are no two countries with a better chance of being allies in Asia than Korea and Japan, and it's completely impossible. And then, when you start learning about the history of countries like Vietnam and Indonesia and Philippines, and you think you're getting all those countries together into a military alliance. But that said, if anything can bring them together, surely it's Chinese aggression, but it's not doing it. So, they've backed way, way off that. But also, it seems like gay marriage also, he's instantly backed off all of those things, saying he doesn't want to do anything with just sort of recognizing the fragility of his support within the LDP. So saying we'll do all of those things when everyone agrees, which is basically never. So, not getting Asian NATO or gay marriage in the same year, to which I commented, I was really hoping for an Asian gato. Possibly inappropriate, I don't know. Why not? Gay marriage and Asian NATO at the same time, they could call it Gato. It would be fabulous, but it's not going to happen. at least in Japan, it's under his. You can't make countries, he can't make South Korea be super friends with Japan, but he can, he can speed up the process of recognition of, marriage equality. So we'll see what happens with that. But that's where we go. Yes, Asian countries, they all get along so well. That's exactly the problem. Damn, Seb. Hope you take it easy. I hope you're pacing yourself anyway. Hopefully the soothing sounds of Tokyo tonight will help you get through it. I do know what that's like. So yeah, Dan H could go on holiday. But you just bought a 5-bedroom home. Wow. Congrats on the home and the enormous family that I assume must be filling it. I don't know. I'll let you get to be setting something up there. Wow, that is awesome. I mean, you're in London, right? I mean, holy crap. Wow, like by the exchange rate, a 5-bedroom home in London translates, I believe, to a 20-bedroom home in Tokyo. So that's a huge congratulations for you. So yes, Japan wants to make an Asian NATO so they can establish and maintain their dominance over the rest of Asia. I disagree. I don't think it's that primarily, okay, you're giving me a squirrel to chase here. Japan's main interest, particularly in being friends with Indonesia, of all the relationships in Asia, which do you think is the most important to Japan? Do you think it's Hong Kong? Do you think it's Taiwan? Japan's got excellent ties with, actually, and back room, probably Taiwan is Japan's best friend in Asia. South Korea, you think it could be, who do you think is the most important country in Asia? I will answer. Indonesia. Indonesia is the country both with the closest relationship with Japan and the most to Japan. Every other country in Asia could hate Japan and be aggressive towards it, but Indonesia is the one that Japan needs. The reason being that every bit of energy that gets shipped in and out of Japan, and every item of trade that gets shipped in and out of Japan, other than the stuff going to America, passes through Indonesia. It has to go through Indonesia to get around to the Middle East and Europe and Africa as well. And Japan's known that it can be blockaded from Indonesia, which is why every overseas development aid project, like since World War II, well, other than the fact that there were for the true believers in the Japanese Imperial Army, they stayed behind in Indonesia after World War II and actually stayed to prevent the Dutch coming back into Indonesia and supported the Indonesian independence, which is a reason why a lot of Indonesian independence war veterans are very pro-Japan. But beyond that, ever since that time, Japan's very quietly, every time that America or Britain or France or the Netherlands or China has tried to underwrite a development aid project in Indonesia, Japan said, hey, how much are they giving you? We'll give you twice the amount. Don't do a deal with them. So Japan's tried to make sure, and it's not a relationship where Japan is dominating Indonesia. Japan doesn't tell Indonesia, directly what to do, except for don't take money from anyone else, which is loosening, by the way. When Indonesia adopted a high-speed rail project from China, that was big news in Japan because that was seen as a kind of a betrayal, but that was the first time in like 70 years. So Japan is interested in making sure everything is peaceful and convenient for it, that its ships can sail through, without any risk to them. But they're not, I don't think they're exercising dominance. I really don't think that Japan has the same mentality as European countries of trying to dominate the foreign policy, and defense policy of other countries. It doesn't have that kind of in spite of obviously a significant blip that it had in World War II and the colonial period before that, where it tried to become a colonial power itself. It's done with colonialism. I really don't think Japan is like that. However, it does recognize the threat of China to its own interests and recognizes that, keeping the rest of Asia, free from Chinese influence is important to its own security interests. So, yeah, I don't think they have dominance over Asia. I don't think it's to maintain dominance, but I think they are afraid of China gaining a kind of dominance that could be averse to them. That's my rabbit hole take on that. Gato. Is how I guess you could pronounce it, but gato would probably be better, I suppose. And natto, who knows? People could actually start exporting natto, which itself could lead to probably a new conflict. I think that might upset everybody if they said you're all members of natto now, and they sent them a whole bunch of natto, all that stuff. Sadiq, great to have you in the chat as always. Moving on. That was the first couple of stories I always talk for way too long. So, Believe in yourself. Great to see you, by the way. Um, fear of cure. I don't know what that means. Anyway, moving on. The cabinet was announced by Shiba Liberal icon Bernie Sanders of the LDP. Not really, but there we go. The AOC of the Liberal Democrat Party. How many women has he appointed? This liberalizer. He has appointed 2 women out of a cabinet of 20 people. When you look historically, the Koizumi cabinet had almost a third of appointments. 5 of 18 were women, including among them Yuriko Koike. In fact, a few of these people, I believe, were among those. The current governor of Tokyo, I think, was under Koizumi. Generally speaking, it's only been 1 or 2. Even when the Democrats came in, they had Renho Shah, the famous celebrity, former beer model, ran and lost to Yuriko in the recent Tokyo election. She was in the cabinet of the Democrats, but even the Democrats only appointed like 2 women, and now Ishiba's there, and he's only appointed 2. So some people pointing that out with more than a little bit of disappointment. It was interesting, however, that the same women who often, who always speak up how Japan, sometimes even women's affairs ministries have been headed up by men. There have been whole debates on NHK about how to address the population issue and women's rights, and the whole panels have been men. And there's Melanie Brock, an Australian sort of expert on all things Japan, who comments a lot, including on politics on Twitter, and always highlights when there's not ridiculous underrepresentation of women. However, she was not for Takaichi becoming Japan's first woman prime minister, mainly because on the social issues, which generally women are looking for progress on, like the right to have a separate surname and so on, she's taking conservatives that even far-right conservatives think, whoa, that's a little bit far out there. So she's actually she's kind of has policy positions which are considered not to be consistent, which it could be said as well that there is a bias, I suppose, by some. I talked about this last week as well. That when you expect to see women representation, you hope that also means liberal support for for women's issues. And I remember myself. I do remember being when I did my degree in political science. I did a conjoint degree in political science and law. Sitting in when we're talking about. At that time, we hadn't yet had a New Zealand. In fact, New Zealand did have a woman prime minister. New Zealand's first woman prime minister was a conservative, and no one really celebrated. Everyone loves Jacinda Ardern because she's a left-wing and very empathetic, and kind of fulfills what I think the hoped-for stereotype of what a woman prime minister would be like. But we had other prime ministers before that, and I remember having this debate with feminists in my political science tutorial. And pointing out how at one point they were sort of saying how we need to have a woman prime minister and more women in leadership positions because they would change how politics is done. And I sort of said, well, look at the track record. Did Margaret Thatcher change how things were done in the UK? And I remember being lectured at length how Margaret Thatcher wasn't a woman by a feminist. And yeah, she kind of made a point. She pointed out that in a completely patriarchal dominated political system, the only way that women can be accepted or have a chance of advancement is to not just be equal to men, but to be more hypermasculine than the men. So she didn't act in a true sort of feminist and a feminine where she didn't exacerbate feminist virtues. She actually exacerbated. She became more masculine than the men, seeking their approval, and that's why she was such a far right winger, and so she doesn't count. I was kind of like, it is funny. Whenever any topic that came up in politics or law on feminists, if you ever want to really find the best counter to a feminist perspective, is you have to just find another feminist, because feminist perspectives on law and politics usually they are their own most vicious enemies. I mean, the men just sort of sit quietly in the corner and try not to draw attention to themselves. But Takaichi fits that sort of profile, that where a lot of women hoping for a woman leader who would advance the rights of women didn't see Takaichi as that woman. They see it as, typically they look for liberal champions. But that said, there are competent women who are not necessarily liberal icons or anything. There was Kamikawa, who I thought would have been okay, even though she's killed 13 people, which I think disqualifies you, but it doesn't disqualify you in the Japanese system. So there's crazy eye killers. There's all sorts of choices, but not enough. So anyway, there's not much representation in the cabinet, and all this talk about how you're supposed to develop women leadership, and how the Japanese government's criticizing Japanese business for not achieving its target of having 30% of executive positions in Japanese companies be filled by women, and yet the LDP itself, even on its party list that they put up on the election, has less than like 5% women representation. So they're not doing anything to create a pipeline or to even fulfill the goals that they're setting for other people. So all of that stuff, anyway. Listen, what? Just sit quietly and try not to draw attention to yourself. You heard it here first. But yeah, it is interesting. So even the feminists who are asking for more representation were not supporting Takaichi generally. But that said, still having a cabinet with only two, I mean, there are some people who I don't think should be allowed in your cabinet, men and women. But there are certainly more than two choices available. So there we go. Yeah, certainly I do know how a lot of people in the UK definitely draw a line between Margaret Thatcher and the end of the world, including my people in my own family, who I don't even care that much. But yeah, even superficially, Margaret Thatcher. When people would say we should have a woman prime minister, America should have a woman president because this is it'll be unicorns and rainbows and sunshine. Margaret Thatcher is proof that that's not necessarily true. Female genitalia is not a guarantee of rainbows and sunshine. But that's it. I mean, there are people who think that she is, described her as the best prime minister of Britain since Churchill. I've heard that phrase be used as well. But she's very polarizing. And I only ever bring her up if I want to trigger people with a connection to the UK. Either way, it's just going to go crazy and I'm not going to have to talk anymore. So yeah. Interesting, Tokyo is now implementing a full year-round ban on drinking at night in Shibuya. And I must say, Shibuya has never been a fancy or a nice neighborhood in Tokyo, but it is really, really, really turning into a crap hole lately. And it's very much the story of why we can't have good things. It's like, for example, at the sumo. Whenever you go to the sumo, there are all these unwritten rules and sort of politeness and so on that while you can go in, this used to be the case. This is now ended. But what used to happen was it was kind of whispered around. But what you could do is if you want to really enjoy a good day at the sumo, but you can't afford the really super expensive $1,000 tickets that you get for the seats right beside the sumo ring, you can only afford the seats up in the bleeders up in the highest, most furthest away seats, which you pay 1,000 yen for. You show up at 10 o'clock in the morning, you pay 10,000 yen, there's nobody sitting beside the dohyo, and you can go and sit in the $1,000 seats with your bento and your sake, and you can sit there and you can watch these wrestlers who are not as famous, and you can sit right beside, you can be dodging the fat guys flying over you, eating your yakitori, drinking your sake, and it's the most fantastic day out. And earlier in the day, like they're younger, they're not as sophisticated, the matches go faster. Sometimes they actually have like fist fights, there's drama, and it's the best day out. And then when the crowds come in at about 2 o'clock, and when the person with the $1,000 ticket comes up to their seat, they always have a guide. The guide will always come ahead and say, "Excuse me, it's time for you to move on. The person who has the seat is coming." And you say, "Oh, I'm very sorry, my dear sir. I will now depart up for the slightly cheaper seats a couple rows back until I get kicked out of that." And you gradually just move back until the final end of the day. You have to watch from your seat. And half the time, actually, what I started to do was, after a few times, I would go home and watch the final matches on TV because you could see them better on TV. But I would just enjoy the day up until 2 o'clock, sitting in the best seats in the sumo place. However, it all got ruined when they showed it on TV, and someone said on TV that you can do this. So what, of course, immediately happens is every scumbag from, Adachi-ku, sorry to discriminate against Adachi-ku, but, that's the stereotype. Anyone from the ghetto comes along and they grab the seat and they refuse to move. And all of a sudden, every single, person with $1,000 ticket coming in turns into a fist fight with belligerent people that heard, TV said that I was allowed to sit here. And nobody followed the unwritten politeness rules about how it's supposed to work, and it got ugly. So the sumo just put a blanket ban. They're going to check your tickets, and if you have a 1,000 yen ticket, you got to sit up there all day, which means that until 2 o'clock, beside the sumo ring is empty because they didn't want to deal with the assholes who came in and wanted to start fights with the people who paid for their tickets. So they ruined it for everybody. A couple of assholes ruins it for everybody. And it's very much the same with consumption of alcohol. Now, everybody who lives in Japan has seen that drunk salaryman on the train, has seen the drunk homeless person on the train. I mean, but nonetheless, when you first came to Japan, they would sell alcohol in vending machines on the platforms. And the idea being that you could buy the beer, and you're generally supposed to carry it home and drink it at home. But occasionally you see someone drink it on the train. So then I have my rugby playing foreign friends come to Japan. Oh my God, they're encouraging you to drink alcohol on the trains. I'm going to buy 10 beers. I'm going to drink them all on the train. And I'm going to start singing songs loudly causing trouble. So they had to take the beer vending machines off the and not just because of the foreigners, but certainly, but they had to start taking the beer vending machines off the platforms. And the same thing as well, that yes, in America, you can't walk around outside with an open can of beer in most cities because most people are assholes about it and they start getting belligerent. So, all these towns have really strict rules around drinking just because of the antisocial behavior that people there have about it. However, you come to Japan doesn't have those sorts of rules because people generally follow the unwritten rules about not being assholes, 99% of the time. And that's enough that 1% is tolerable, that, everybody can sort of, get by with it. However, you get foreigners who see that, oh, well, there's nothing that says I can't, instead of going to an izakaya in Shibuya, there's nothing that says I can't just go to a family mart, buy 10 strong zeros with my best friends and stand in the middle of Sentogai, enjoy the atmosphere, get shit-faced, start some fights with people, drop my rubbish, and invite 50 of my friends to stand outside blocking all the businesses that are actually, trying to charge people for coming in and having the food and drinking and scaring away all their customers and turning Shibuya into, like a dodgy part of in a US city. And that's kind of what it's become like. You've got all these people who've seen, well, the rules don't say that I can't, so I'm going to do it. And it's filled up. And unfortunately, Japanese do this as well, absolutely. And Japanese see this and they join in. But no question, the proportion of foreigners that are doing this, and I get it, foreigners are overwhelmed with, oh my God, Japan, you're allowed to do this. We have to take maximum advantage of this until we ruin it for everybody. And that's what's happened. You can't, and this is why we can't have good things. And this is the downside of globalization, is that you start having the minimum standards in every country. You can't come to a country in Japan where things are better. Because people don't act like assholes, because you have a few assholes come in. Not all foreigners are like this, but there are definitely, there have always been asshole foreigners. And now that we've multiplied that very small proportion of particularly Western country foreigners who are particularly bad at taking advantage of this sort of thing, now that we've flooded with 35 million tourists a year and they're all going into Shibuya and getting shit-faced in the street and, dropping rubbish and making trouble, Shibuya said, right, we're done. No more drinking at all after 6 p.m. In the street. And all the businesses there are the ones who are against it. So now the story, people are saying, so where is the next drinking outside place going to be? And my speculation is that it'll be Kabukicho. It'll be in Shinjuku. I've actually been through Shinjuku. I went around, why was I in Kabukicho? There are legitimate reasons to be in Kabukicho. I'm trying to remember what it was. I think I was actually shocked when I walked through one. Kabukicho used to be legit, nothing but like prostitutes and gangsters. And the Korean residents of there. And I think I've told the story before about how I got taken out there and I couldn't get into anywhere. And so I discovered the betting center and the restaurants. I actually started going to Kabukicho, just knowing that I was kind of safe from vice because they wouldn't let me in anywhere. However, it's become a kind of a weird Disneyland. There are a lot of, I would take friends, there are great nightclubs and places to go out there. And I'd go out clubbing there all the time. Actually, there are some great concert places and so on. But now you go there and it's this weird kind of half tourist Disneyland. Like people go there for the movie theater with the big Godzilla cutout and all this sort of thing. Right beside where all the same host bars and hostess bars and, everything else there are still there. And I was really surprised that, oh my God, how could you turn this into like a tourist district? But it really is, like whole families walking around with suitcases and stuff into basically Yakuza-controlled neighborhoods. Full of brothels and host bars. So, and it's possible to walk through because it's clean and it's safe and not even realize. And because it's not that obvious in some parts, it's possible that they don't even realize that. But something's already happened. Last week, a drunk French person got into a street fight with a Japanese person and killed him. And he was drunk, so he doesn't remember. And I myself kind of thought, well, it would be interesting because there is this thing as well. You never cause trouble in Kabukicho because the local security are not very nice people. And one wonders how if the folks who are drinking in the street in Shibuya and making trouble would be able to get away with it as easily in Kabukicho. But there again, Kabukicho is just weird right now. It's kind of gentrified. It's gotten kind of cleaner. It's kind of gone up market, and it's even become touristy. In fact, I've met friends like at a big whole tourist sort of oriented like restaurant area there where it's nothing but foreigners. How that happened in Kabukicho, I don't know. But there again, I suppose that would be the next place to go to. But I would recommend to everyone, please don't be a dickhead because you do ruin it for everybody. And especially don't be a dickhead in Kabukicho because they might not find your body. just be careful, all of that stuff. 11:02. Let's move on. Quick look at the comments. What do we got here? And in typical Japanese fashion, it is blamed on foreigners. Well, yeah, and like I said, there's always been drunk salarymen lying in the street and so on. It's never just been Japanese. But the point is, I think it was always small and low-key enough that people could deal with it. But when you suddenly have a center guy is flooded with foreigners, and I don't know if they're all tourists, but it's clogged with drinking, standing in the street drinking tourists now, who have all bought their drinks in convenience stores and are not contributing to the businesses that run the town association. The way that they're doing it has ruined it. So even I blame it partly on foreigners, and the fact is it's and even if it's unfair, we have to acknowledge we're a highly visible minority, and when we act like assholes, it really stands out more than if Koreans or Chinese do it, for example. And oh yeah, the garbage has gotten worse. The rats in Shibuya are like dogs. They're not even like cats. The cats would run away from the rats. They're enormous, and yeah, the rubbish situation, everything there has just gotten worse. So yeah. Question from Believe in Yourself. I don't even know what the LTT store is, so I guess that answers your question. Or what a scribe driver is. I don't know. So someone else there can ask. Interesting week of announcements. I continue to follow the smart glasses technology stuff, and particularly what Meta is doing. I don't like Meta. I don't like their business model of basically spying on you and selling your identity to advertisers and so on. However, if they're going to do anything with that money that's useful, their investment in AI and their investment in making smart glasses happen, like properly, I can kind of get behind. I did see, however, there was a video today of how some Harvard students actually did what you can already do just with the webcam. You can walk around, anyone can walk around with a webcam right now, just point it around, and if you've got like a database, hook it up to any database of photo profiles, whatever, from social media, from Twitter, anything that sort of is a public, from LinkedIn, you could scrape any sort of a public identity database. And what they did was they integrated it into the Meta smart glasses and just walked around in New York and were able to, I think it was happening where they had someone remotely pulling the profiles of people that they were looking around and tagging and getting like, a whole profile of the person. This person, is active in an activist group that does this. And they could walk up and say, excuse me, I think I know you from the so-and-so association. Is your name Linda? I think we've met before. And people instantly sort of respond and say, oh, yeah, nice to meet you. Good to talk to you and so on. Which you realize, oh, this is going to become like a social interactive version of spamming. People are going to be, and it's true, this technology isn't new, but the ability to actually use smart glasses to do this sort of thing, which was part of the backlash against Google Glass when it happened. The Minority Report future, where you walk around and you can see profiles of everyone and everything as you walk around. That is a thing, and I don't know how we're going to deal with that. But at the same time, there was a news story today about a woman in Japan who was in a crowd of people walking across a train crossing, and she was walking just glued to her smartphone. And when the gates lowered, she walked into it, and she assumed that she was on the outside of the gate. She had actually crossed the train lines and was trying to get around. Was supposed to go around the gate that had descended so that she could go back, get off the train tracks. But she was so glued to her phone, she didn't realize that she thought she was outside the gates, but she was actually inside them, standing on the train tracks. And she stood there waiting for 20 seconds, and the train came and ran her over. So, I would like to think that smart glasses, where you're at least able to look ahead and see what's in front, see stuff in the world while you are also looking at that world, might have benefits like that as well. In any case, I do want that sort of Back to the Future to, Minority Report glasses, but definitely it's going to raise a whole lot of new problems. So there we go. Pizza Rat. This is only giving you that New York City subway reference. Yes, I recognize it. That was a horrific video as well. But man, the Shibuya's rats are not to be messed with either, and I'm sure it's not getting any better. Samurai Pizza Cats. I love Samurai Pizza Cats. That was a great show. The people who dubbed it are the real heroes of that show, by the way. Dan H. I think it'll be less effective in Asia due to people's fear of privacy and tendency to hide their social media profiles. Well, certainly, if there are any photos, or if you use them on any cats in the street, you're probably going to get a profile 11239667 and the owner. But yeah, you'd have to find their cats first rather than the actual people. That's kind of a good point. Well, and the demonstration that was done by the Harvard people of how easy it would be to dox people using smart glasses, maybe that would be different. In fact, maybe it would work better in Asia because people are more careful about what they put on social media, which Americans in particular are not at all. But you're right, sensitivity against it as well will be a thing. And certainly, I think in Asia, particularly in Korea and Japan, people to find out other ways to abuse it is kind of scary. That's the part that I think is scary as well. So yeah, Shubhas, that is a smart way to be. I don't like Meta, and I hardly post on it anymore. But I am on WhatsApp and I am on Instagram. So they've got me, one way or another. I don't want to be one of these people announcing that I'm leaving Facebook because I no longer can abide by. If I was like that, I wouldn't be on Twitter, right? Because I can't agree with the ethics of the company or its founder or something like that. But I don't. My biggest problem with Facebook is I just don't find it useful for anything really anymore. There's very few people I know who only post on Facebook that I'm not going to, have contact with. I keep it there pretty much for just being able to connect with people who are not on other platforms. But even that's pretty limited now. Anyway, Korea, the rational and calm reacting country to the Fukushima wastewater release. Because of the national panic there, of the two things, radioactive water and Japan, two things sure to trigger hate and panic in South Korea, demanded that the government spend money on checking that the waters around Korea, which I remind you, they're releasing the waters from the east coast of Japan into the Pacific. Korea in the Sea of Japan, which they insist is the East Sea, which I've also suggested. That's a very Korea-centric perspective of the sea. I suppose they would say calling it the Sea of Japan is a Japan-centric perspective. I've always suggested the best compromise for the Sea of Japan, East Sea debate would be just to call it the West Sea. You could use a direction for it. It doesn't say Japan anymore, but it just change it around to being from Japan rather than Korea's perspective. I think they could live with that. But anyway, even though they are on what they call the East Sea, and the Fukushima wastewater release is completely on the other side of Japan into the Pacific, they have demanded, this is different to that. They demanded two things, water testing around Korea to make sure Korea wasn't being contaminated by Fukushima wastewater, but also when the Korean government, under Yoon, which is being relatively Japanese-friendly, said that they would test every seafood product that came in from Japan, in fact, from Fukushima specifically, or from that area to test it, to find, and they would publish anything that was exceeding limits. So they spent 1,740 oku yen, which translates to about 1.5 billion US dollars, on testing every single piece of seafood that came out of Japan, and not a single thing was found to be exceeding safety limits that were set. So essentially, Korea spent $1.5 billion proving that Japanese seafood is safe. I've been eating it the whole time, obviously, and half the time, if you're eating like from a restaurant or a supermarket or something, like if you're eating like a aji fry from a supermarket, they don't tell you where the fish is from. And all that stuff which you're buying and it's not labeled where it's from, like you'd get from a restaurant, a lot of it's from Fukushima. You can't do anything about it. But there's been no health problems here, in spite of what the nuclear hysterics were telling us, that we'd all be glowing and dead by now. 100 times over, we're alive and we're eating good fish. And Korean taxpayers, there again, I guess it's kind of a hysteria tax. And if it got them comfortable, and they did Japan a huge solid. So a lot of people are pointing out, haha, Koreans, you paid to prove that we're safe. But it kind of did, and it's what they wanted to do as well. So, hopefully everybody feels better about things. In fact, this is the thing as well with China, like not wanting to get involved. China recently did a deal that they will now participate in Fukushima wastewater testing, which Japan invited them to do with every other country that was concerned, and they refused. Partly because sometimes it's you just want to hold on to the anger. You don't want to know the facts. You just want to be able to. You want to deliberately not know the facts in order to stay angry. And Korea traditionally, I think, with the left-wing government would have been like that. The right-wing government said, let's find a compromise. Let's test everything and bring it back in. And yeah, they actually did Japan a bit of a solid. And at the end of the day, I mean, data is the only way you can break these sort of issues down. So actually going well because of that. Hey, BGP, good to have you in here. I am good. I'm feeling good. I'm looking forward to my big trip to the south of Japan tomorrow. And I hope that you're having a good one where you are. I mean, day and age, Koreans don't trust their own tap water and tend to buy bottles. Same in Japan, same in a lot of countries nowadays. Although they have some of the best tap water quality in the world. Tokyo famously has terrible tap water just because the pipes and everything are so old. Shintaro Ishihara made it one of his campaign things that he was going to improve the water quality in Tokyo, and he did. But I think so many people are just out of the habit of drinking water out of the tap anyway. Thursday, got 15 minutes. We're up to Thursday. Let's keep going. I actually did. A tree fell in the forest. I don't know if anybody heard it. I made a really good mix of new music on Thursday, relatively smoothly. There was, in fact, I think it was Wednesday, but I think it finished up on, it was the Wednesday. Sorry, Thursday. But yeah, I made a mix of new music and drum and bass music and so on. I'm just using the old mixer now. The new mixer just gave me so many headaches. So yeah, it went pretty smoothly. The sound came out great. It was fun. I think about 3 people dropped in to say hello, but it was really good. I saved the mix. I would like to find a way to share mixes if people are interested, but it was a pretty good one. So I'm looking very much forward to the after party from today. Got a lot of good music in there. Really got good at the end when I was mixing a lot of drum and bass and hip hop music. And those two genres they not only match in BPMs, but the hip hop, if you get the vibe and the vocals off legit hip hop and you put it on top of drum and bass, it goes off. It's awesome. So I really enjoyed that. So do check that out. Gaijin Mummy is a national institution and must be protected at all costs. She draws these things. She comes up with these things. And yeah, she is an institution. So Japan, according to the internet, I did not know that you need to lock up your bicycle in Hokkaido. The Japanese ancient art of snow. Oh, I see. So she's using memes about Japan for this. Radioactive seafood in Fukushima. Japanese don't protest, although of course at Narita they've been throwing pipe bombs and everything for a while. Shikita ga nai. Somebody talking about the Japanese philosophy of shikita ga nai, can't be helped. It's actually shikata ga nai, and people actually say shoganai, but she turned that into Nagoya, very clever. The tiny little village in Okinawa where the life expectancy is 346 years, which is because they forget to register the deaths down there, and they don't register the births properly either because they're mostly just drinking. That's an awful thing to say, actually, but it does turn out that the extreme life expectancy of Okinawa is influenced by the lack of proper bureaucratic process down there. The secret fifth island where AI photos coming out of Japan originate. Everyone, the recent person saying that in Japan, everybody giving birth in Japan gets hotel treatment and gets served lobster. It all happens on this island. So all of these things, underwear vending machines, all very, very good. So, you can't see it, Aaron. Let's see if we can zoom in enhance. Will it let me? Maybe. I've got it on like maximum zoom right now. And some of the stuff is quite small. All I can really suggest is follow Gaijin Mummy on Twitter because she is awesome and she makes lots of these things. I'm going to put this back to normal size. But yes, she's doing very well. Geez, Chris Broad is about to do a documentary on Tokyo. He's meeting with the governor. I mean, I wouldn't be surprised if he's going to become the governor of Tokyo himself or something. I mean, again, maximum respect to Chris Broad, showing what you can do with a webcam. In fairness, he was never just a webcam. He was never just a person crying in his closet in front of a webcam. He always actually got a good camera and had high production qualities. And I do think back to Tokyo Kuni, who was the originator of high quality self-made Japan tourist content. But he's really maximized what a foreign YouTuber in Japan can be. So congrats to him on that. The CDP, the main opposition party, has released its manifesto, its policy manifesto. What policies will the opposition offer to entice us away from the wonderland that is Japan under the LDP, you ask? Well, their first policy is to seek a change in government. Somebody pointed out there's a problem with that, which is that if they become the government and their policy is to change the government, then they'll have to immediately resign. I mean, if their policy, I don't think they understand what a policy is if their first policy is not losing the election. And that also makes me question, if that's what their new policy is, was their old policy losing the election? Because if that's true, they executed on it with perfection, for 70 years. So, again, do they realize, does any political party in any country have a manifesto on their policies? What's your policy for immigration? Not losing the election. Whatever wins us the election, we're all for it. Second one, they are going to focus on political reform, which I guess is inherently kind of flows with number one. If you're going to be changing the government, you're inherently reforming it. Again, that's not really a policy. They are talking about banning corporate donations, but generally speaking, they don't have any real specific ideas. I mean, they want some of those corporate donations themselves, probably. The third one is specifically raising the minimum wage to 1,500 yen, which actually in most parts of Japan is less than 1,000 yen. Even 1,500 yen doesn't sound like much, but Japan does have quite low minimum wages. It varies by prefecture, but wanting to set a national minimum. So that is a policy. They have 1 out of 3 there. But again, you talk about Brewster's Millions, the old movie of a guy who gets given $20 million and told if he can spend it, he gets $200 million at the end of it. So he runs a political campaign where he's just trying to lose because his mission is to burn all the money. And I really think that's what's happening with the CDP. I really think that they're trying to, they're in a competition to try to make themselves lose. Okinawa, unintended promoter of all things deep fried. Do they have that much deep fried food? They certainly have the tackles, rice, and all that sort of stuff. They have some food that's not helped, but they do actually have. I mean, again, people say, "Oh, eat Goya, you'll live to be." There's a thing about Goya. I love Goya not champuru, champon. No, champon's from Norway. Champuru. So champuru is Okinawa. Champon is Nagasaki. A totally different thing. I love Goya champon. And you think with the Goya, which is a bitter sort of cucumber and tofu, it starts out great, but then it's got huge chunks of American military spam in it. And that stuff has basically caused the life expectancy in the Pacific Islands to drop to like 30 and everybody to weigh 300 kilograms. It's basically all the processed sort of meat, pork products. I always thought, well, this Goya must be so powerful it contradicts that. But, no, apparently it's just they keep records badly. It's not so much deep fried, but there is a mix of good quality and bad quality food down there. Oh yeah, we're going to get to this, but the commemorative photo of the new cabinet, which only of course had 2 women in it, raised multiple issues. One of them was somebody pointed out the old tanuki statue that is in front of every bar that every restaurant, izakaya that has likes tanukis. Tanuki is sort of a folk figure like foxes or whatever in Europe. Tanukis are a little bit, they're like raccoons. I think they have, for mammals at least, the largest proportion of testicular to body ratio of a lot of animals anyway. And so they love to have, that's what this particular feature here is. Given the cut of the pants, I mean, anything is possible here, but also pointing out the statue always looks the same. It's like the cat with one hand. They also have the tanuki with the barrel of sake and the big balls standing outside. As someone's saying, this looks too similar, too familiar. However, the bigger problem, which I must admit I now want to skip ahead a little bit, the bigger problem was that the cabinet picture, can I zoom in on this? Yes. The cabinet picture revealed, can I zoom in hearts? Oh yes, I can. Something unfortunate. the new prime minister, you know what? Maybe it is a shirt. They're saying that his shirt was hanging out. You could see the shirts below the vest, which you're not supposed to do. You're supposed to have the belt come up above that. However, the belt was below. And someone pointing out, this looks a little bit pink. That might not be a shirt. That looks like his tummy is hanging out below his vest. So some people pointing out that they didn't even know how to wear their proper dress suits. And thanks for the warning, Aaron. I think we're on track. They took this photo, and apparently, like, some of the national newspapers were like even blurring out their mid parts, making it look like things were hanging out that should not have been hanging out. But in any case, apart from the fact that there's no woman in the photo, people pointing out as well that the prime minister and the defense minister beside him both had like their shirts hanging out the bottom of their vests, and apparently in the case of the prime minister, what looks like his actual stomach. And so they photoshopped it, and the official photo looks like this. Looking fit and trim, and no tummy hanging out whatsoever. However, some people noticed the Photoshop, and now they're getting even more criticized for the likelihood that the photo was doctored, which it certainly was. But there we go, controversies with the new cabinet. So going back anyway. Also, while I tried to say that Takaichi used to be a drooling right-wing maniac, I think she's more intelligent and mature and capable of, being a viable, possible leader. I was thinking maybe she was going to be Japan's first prime minister. So I had, softened my tone on her a bit. However, PM Kishida apparently quietly refers to her as Taliban because he considers her such an extremist. Which, hell, I mean, maybe she is the Marjorie Taylor Greene, like some were saying. This is just, I think this is a weekly newspaper tabloids inside take that apparently he was calling that. Yeah, you're about to Photoshop an eggplant in there. Yes, remember everybody, indeed, Shubas, smash the like button like Shubas did. Be like Shubas, everybody. Be like Shubas. So anyway, Takaichi, yeah, even the former Prime Minister Kishida apparently still calls her the Taliban. So there you go. That's why everybody voted for Ishiba. Ishiba has backed down from just about every commitment that every soft commitment that he didn't have to make. He said that he would clean up corruption. Now he's going to allow members of the party who took slush fund political funds that weren't declared. He's going to allow them to run for the LDP. And apparently now he's being forced to reverse his reversal because now people are so up in arms that he would allow them to run. So now word is today that he might have reversed that again, but he's reversing his take on banning corrupt politicians from running again from the LDP. He said he wouldn't, then he said he would raise interest rates, but everyone said no, the economy couldn't take it. So he said, okay, I'm not going to raise the interest rates. This was within 3 days. He said specifically that there would be no snap election. The first day he said, okay, we're going to have a snap election, everybody. Asian NATO, he backpedaled immediately and said, no, that's just a vision. We're not going to really do that. And gay marriage and separate surnames, well, as soon as everybody agrees, which will be sometime in the next 10,000 years. So he went to the trouble of saying these things. He didn't have to say them, but he said them. But now he's like backtracking on all of them. I mean, the lettuce is not only like starting to rot, it hasn't even been taken out of the fridge yet, and he's already rolling back. So yeah, the idea that Ishiba might not last long is already coming around because of that. Gaijin Mummy showing Japanese male personal pronouns. The Photoshop picture of the vice presidential candidate, Boku, which she makes very dashing. Boku, I was told by my first Japanese girlfriend, who I lived with for a few years. So I used to say Boku, or, first I said Watashi. First I said Watashi because that's what they taught us at Japanese school. Then she would say Atashi all the time, and I copied her, and she said, do not say that. I was like, okay, Boku. And she said, don't say Boku. Boku makes you sound like you have an Oedipus complex. I don't know if that's how Bokus sound to everybody, but she said, it makes you sound like you're a little boy. You're a man. Say ore. I was like, ore? Well, I've never heard, they never taught us that in Japanese class. She says, you say ore. So I was coached to say ore, and I still say ore. If I'm like around the emperor, I might tone it down and say jibun. But I am an ore person in principle. None of this Boku stuff. Boku would be like a little boy in my book, whereas ore looks... Photoshop is impressive. Wagahai, yeah, this is a bit nerdier look. Watashi, yeah, sort of gender neutral. I like it. Androgynous. There we go. Atashi, little bit effeminate there, and creep who will never be vice president. There we go. Gaiji Mummy as an institution must be protected at all costs. Running, that's the Requiem Gardens I was running by the other day. I don't know. I suddenly got fast. It's like it turbocharges you. I really am looking forward to running in Fukuoka. I found an island I want to run around. Don't know if I can, but I'm going to try to run around it. We'll see what happens. Diddy calls me Boku. Didn't know that you and Diddy were on Boku terms, but there you go. The Tamanegi, Japan. That could possibly get saying the Taliban thing. A poll, a women's online paper sort of did a poll of women in their 20s and 30s and asked who are the politicians that you would most like to see resign. Number 3 was number 3 was Naoto Kan. Number 2 was Ichiro Ozawa, who I'm kind of a fan of. And number 1 was Taro Aso. By the way, spoiler alert. You can see the whole list of politicians that women the most hate. There's no one that anyone really likes. Japanese rappers. A Japanese rapper with eyebrows that make him look like he's from Ibaraki and rides on a particularly noisy motorcycle. I don't know. His name is Karma Furofu. I don't know who he is, but apparently he's a rapper guy. It is actually quite brave to speak out, saying, hey, we should think about our policies about regulation of marijuana in this country. Because that is literally into the ears of most people in Japan saying, hey, we should go easy on crack cocaine. We should just let people have it. And people would say, what, have you lost your mind? That's what it's like with when you say marijuana in Japan. So he's saying that, Japan's strict prohibition on marijuana is just so unfair. It's saying all the talent that we're going to lose overseas because of it. In overseas, everybody smokes it. It's perfectly fine. We should be like them. Most of Japan, this was done on an internet commenting site where everybody pretty much says, you're Pablo Escobar, and let them go, let all the druggies leave the country and all that sort of stuff. But it was interesting that someone even tried to turn it into a perfectly reasonable debate. Yeah, if you tell anyone in Japan that, in the end of the day, practically speaking, there's no real difference, substantively between marijuana and alcohol or cigarettes. In fact, there are ways in which it's less harmful than alcohol or cigarettes. People don't generally get into violent fistfights, nor do, or behave antisocially, and they don't get addicted from it. I mean, there are definitely other problems associated with excessive use, but you can't even get into those sorts of details. Then it becomes, how do you know that? Why are you speaking up for it? So Japan's not really ready to discuss it, but there we go. The Prime Minister backtracking on everything. Japan voted the best country in the world for the second year in a row by the Condé Nast Traveler poll. Best country and given the insane exchange rate and the weather right now, I mean, I knew this like 25 years ago. That's why I moved here. But for people who are traveling, definitely Japan is a place. If you're watching this, you should be coming. You should be booking your tickets to come here right now because it's cheap. The weather is great, and it's a great country. Tokyo was actually voted the 6th friendliest city in the world. I must say, when I experienced my reverse culture shock, when I went to America and I came back to Tokyo after 5.5 months of being in America, in America, even in Seattle, which is not known as a friendly city, strangers will still say, hey, buddy, how's it going? All the time. You have spontaneous conversations with strangers 10 times a day in America. And when I came back to Tokyo and realizing not only does no one interact with strangers, but everyone's kind of pissed off with each other, I really felt that. I experienced reverse culture shock in Japan. And I don't know. I really felt like Japan is... Tokyo, I felt that. I really wonder, how can tourists come here and feel like this is good? I guess when you're a tourist, you don't notice that. But I kind of came back and noticed it because I'm a local. Well earned, and that was cool. Interesting watching. I watch rocket launches for fun. The ULA second test proving flight, it was a blinding success, except one of the solid rocket boosters bottoms fell off it. It exploded, and it looked like it was going to end up like the Challenger explosion, where one of the solid rocket boosters from the bottom started exploding and the whole thing sort of unraveled. However, it didn't unravel. It kept flying with one of its boosters not working properly, and it hit orbit perfectly well, which was a great success. That was really cool. More space stuff. The Joker guy who wanted to lead an anti-foreigner patrol was surrounded by anti-racism protesters and complained that the anti-racism protesters were bullying him, stopping him from bullying. They were bullies stopping the bully from bullying with bullying. A lot of layers to that, but that's what he claimed. Oh yeah, turns out yesterday they found out that Ishiba's own faction had members who were taking slush fund money, so he might not even be able to have his own friends run in the next election. And finally, yeah, what I was just saying about the smart glasses. 11:31, 1 minute over. I am done with all of the bullyception. That is exactly the thing. Slick with the kicks. Good to have you in here. Do you believe? Do your thing. I will do that. Slick with your kicks. In fact, I'm about to do that right now over on Tokyo Digital Crew with the after party where you get to pick the tracks, which I'm looking forward to. I'm going to go set that up right now. Oh, now I see. You're a legalize it. Great. So long as you're not doing it in Japan, I say do what you want. No, go for it. But good to have you in the chat. Good to have all of you in the chat. Thank you for keeping me as company as always. Like I said, I'm going to do a solid 1 hour and out because I got to sleep tonight. But if you're in Fukuoka, hit me up. I'll be there this week. And otherwise, have a good rest of your week. But do come and join me in the after party. Link, Aaron just posted it. I'm going to be over there in about 2 minutes. And I'll see you all soon. So boom, have a good week, everybody. Peace. And book that trip to Japan. Now's the right time. See you later. Still looking to buy a Kominka. That's an awesome move, Black Team. You should do that. Okay. I'll see you all later.